Hi, my name is Father Mike Schmitz, and you're listening to the Bible in a Year podcast, where we encounter God's voice and live life through the lens of Scripture. The Bible in a Year podcast is brought to you by Ascension. Using the Great Adventure Bible timeline, we'll read all the way from Genesis to Revelation, discovering how the story of salvation unfolds and how we fit into that story today. It is day 310. You might know this, but there are 3 days left in the Old Testament, not counting the book of Proverbs, which is pretty phenomenal. We have 2 Maccabees chapter 13, the book of Wisdom chapter 15 and 16, as well as Proverbs chapter 25 verses 15 through 17. As always, the Bible translation I'm reading from is the Revised Standard Version, Second Catholic Edition. I'm using the Great Adventure Bible from Ascension. If you want to download your own Bible in a Year reading plan, you can visit ascensionpress.com/Bible in a Year. You can also subscribe to this podcast by clicking on subscribe, and then you will be subscribed. And audio magically will be updated every single day. It is day 310. We're reading 2 Maccabees chapter 13, the Wisdom of Solomon chapter 15 and 16, as well as Proverbs chapter 25 verses 15 through 17. The second book of the Maccabees, chapter 13. Menelaus the first put to death. In the 149th year, word came to Judas and his men that Antiochus Eupator was coming with a great army against Judea, and with him Lysias his guardian, who had charge of the government. Each of them had a Greek force of 110,000 infantry, 5,300 cavalry, 22 elephants, and 300 chariots armed with scythes. Menelaus also joined them, and with utter hypocrisy urged Antiochus on, not for the sake of his country's welfare, but because he thought that he would be established in office. But the King of Kings aroused the anger of Antiochus against the scoundrel, and when Lysias informed him that this man was to blame for all the trouble, he ordered them to take him to Berea and to put him to death by the method which is the custom in that place. For there is a tower in that place, 50 cubits high, full of ashes, and it has a rim running around it, which on all sides inclines precipitously into the ashes. There they all push to destruction any man guilty of sacrilege or notorious for other crimes. By such a fate it came about that Menelaus the lawbreaker died, without even burial in the earth. And this was eminently just. Because he had committed many sins against the altar whose fire and ashes were holy, he met his death in ashes. A battle near Modin. The king, with barbarous arrogance, was coming to show the Jews things far worse than those that had been done in his father's time. But when Judas heard of this, he ordered the people to call upon the Lord day and night, now if ever, to help those who were on the point of being deprived of the law and their country and the holy temple, and not to let the people who had just begun to revive fall into the hands of the blasphemous Gentiles. When they had all joined in the same petition and had begged the merciful Lord with weeping and fasting and lying prostrate for 3 days without ceasing, Judas exhorted them and ordered them to stand ready. After consulting privately with the elders, he determined to march out and decide the matter by the help of God before the king's army could enter Judea and get possession of the city. So, committing the decision to the Creator of the world and exhorting his men to fight nobly to the death for the laws, temple, city, country, and commonwealth, he pitched his camp near Modin. He gave his men the watchword, God's victory, and with a picked force of the bravest young men, he attacked the king's pavilion at night and slew as many as 2,000 men in the camp. He stabbed the leading elephant and its rider. In the end, they filled the camp with terror and confusion and withdrew in triumph. This happened just as day was dawning, because the Lord's help protected him. Antiochus makes a treaty with the Jews. The king, having had a taste of the daring of the Jews, tried strategy in attacking their positions. He advanced against Bet-zur, a strong fortress of the Jews, was turned back, attacked again, and was defeated. Judas sent into the garrison whatever was necessary. But Rhodocus, a man from the ranks of the Jews, gave secret information to the enemy. He was sought for, caught, and put in prison. The king negotiated a second time with the people in Bet-zur, gave pledges, received theirs, withdrew, attacked Judas and his men, was defeated. He got word that Philip, who had been left in charge of the government, had revolted in Antioch. He was dismayed, called in the Jews, yielded and swore to observe all their rites, settled with them and offered sacrifice, honored the sanctuary, and showed generosity to the holy place. He received Maccabeus, left Hegemonides as governor from Ptolemais to Gerar, and went to Ptolemais. The people of Ptolemais were indignant over the treaty. In fact, they were so angry that they wanted to annul its terms. Lysias took the public platform, made the best possible defense, convinced them, appeased them, gained their goodwill, and set out for Antioch. This is how the king's attack and withdrawal turned out. The Wisdom of Solomon, chapter 15. True worship of God contrasted to idols. But you, our God, are kind and true, patient, and ruling all things in mercy. For even if we sin, we are yours, knowing your power. But we will not sin, because we know that we are considered yours. For to know you is complete righteousness, and to know your power is the root of immortality. For neither has the evil intent of human art misled us, nor the fruitless toil of painters, a figure stained with various colors, whose appearance arouses yearning in fools, so that they desire the lifeless form of a dead image. Lover of evil things and fit for such objects of hope are those who either make or desire or worship them. For when a potter kneads the soft earth and laboriously molds each vessel for our service, he fashions out of the same clay both the vessels that serve clean uses and those for contrary uses, making all in like manner. But which shall be the use of each of these, the worker in clay decides. With misspent toil he forms a futile god from the same clay, this man, who was made of earth a short time before, and after a little while goes to the earth from which he was taken when he is required to return the soul that was lent him. But he is not concerned that he is destined to die, or that his life is brief. But he competes with workers in gold and silver, and imitates workers in copper, and he counts it his glory that he molds counterfeit gods. His heart is ashes, his hope is cheaper than dirt, and his life is of less worth than clay, because he failed to know the one who formed him and inspired him with an active soul and breathed into him a living spirit. But he considered our existence an idle game, and life a festival held for profit. For he says one must get money however he can, even by base means. For this man, more than all others, knows that he sins when he makes from earthy matter fragile vessels and graven images. But most foolish, and more miserable than an infant, are all the enemies who oppressed your people. For they thought that all their heathen idols were gods, though these have neither the use of their eyes to see with, nor nostrils with which to draw breath, nor ears with which to hear, nor fingers to feel with, and their feet are of no use for walking. For a man made them, and one whose spirit is borrowed formed them. For no man can form a god which is like himself, he is mortal, and what he makes with lawless hands is dead. For he is better than the objects he worships, since he has life, but they never have. The enemies of your people worship even the most hateful of animals, which are worse than all others when judged by their lack of intelligence. And even as animals, they are not so beautiful in appearance that one would desire them, but they have escaped both the praise of God and his blessing. Chapter 16. Therefore,